to talk about, or at least it's very interesting to me. As you probably know, Kabbalism, there is a whole schools of Hasidic mysticism where what it's about is the alphabet. And the Hebrew alphabet, for those people, is the primal Ursprach, and these are not simply letters, they are the letters. They are the letters that God intended to use to signify the presence of the G-D to man. Very interesting work on this by Stan Tenen, who's a fascinating figure, sort of like me in a way. I mean, I think half crackpot, half hopefully something else. But Stan has created a three-dimensional object, a sculpture, which, when illuminated with a bright source of light in a series of from a series of predictable points, casts shadows of all of the Hebrew letters. Do you understand what's happening here? It means that this object is a higher dimensional analog to the entire Hebrew alphabet, that you could think of the Hebrew alphabet as an object in hyperspace, slice it this way, Aleph, this way, Bet, this way, and so on. I told Ralph about this, Abraham, and he said, whoa, no problem. We could write a computer program that could take the letters of any language and backward engineer it upward to a higher dimension to get an object that would do that for Sanskrit, for English, for Arabic, whatever. And that seemed astonishing to me. And then he said, and you know what we could do once we had achieved that? We could take those probably five-dimensional objects, and we could do the calculation up to 8 or 9 or 10 dimensions, and we would eventually end up with an object that shed the letters of all alphabets into lower dimensions according to the angle of its regarding. Well, this kind of thing raises the hair on the back of my neck. We're actually getting somewhere, folks. And this sounds to me like God in some sense. I mean, I guess it's God to a printhead. It's God as the fountainhead of all alphabetical and glyphic signification of meaning as it pours through the universe. Very, very interesting concept. I ran across a passage recently that I was completely startled by. It's in Herman Melville's book Marty, which is his youthful travel journals around the South Seas before he got into the big guns. And but at one point in Marty, there's a discussion among some seamen on the deck of a ship about the future. And one of them is asking, what does it mean? What is the future? And this seaman looks up and he says, the future, 'tis all hieroglyphics. Very, very prescient comment, because as we now know, we are code, we are DNA code. We're about to build a civilization made of code in VRML, and we are learning, languages like Perl and C++, and so in a sense, the future is all hieroglyphic. I sort of feel that the world is all deception. It's some kind of a koan, or a problem, or a labyrinth, or a thing to be seen through. And if you don't figure it out, you would take it to be real. And then, it shunts you into the yawning grave. But if you can somehow realize that the purpose of your existence is to figure it out, and then figure it out, you will be, in some sense, liberated from it. There's a wonderful science fiction story that I remember from years and years ago. I can't remember the name of it, but it's by Robert Heinlein. And it's about a man who, he's some kind of commuter, some dullard. But as he leaves his house one morning on his way to his daily job, he looks down at the edge of his lawn, and a worm crawls out of the ground that has these golden pearlescent wings. And it flies off. And it's just this completely improbable thing, like a hallucination. And then later in the day, and he says to himself, it's an angel worm. It's an angel worm. And then later in the day, something else happens. I can't remember. And then later in the day, something else, equally improbable. And in the evening, he's sitting, considering these three unlikely things, and he realizes that the E-mat has slipped in the cosmic book, and that he was supposed to see an angleworm, but he saw an angel worm because the E had jumped position in the line of type that was describing what was going on. And then he begins to pay more and more attention, and he realizes then that he can find these typographical errors in reality. I only like the story for the idea that the world is made of elements that are completely hidden from us and don't betray themselves unless there's a glitch in the assembly languages, in the deeper levels of the system. And that's the raison d'etre for probing the edge, because those are like benchmark tests for the cybernetic system we're in. You know, you want to push it to the limit. Of course, the system can add 2 and 2, but, you know, can it carry out these complex factorial processes where if we're being shucked and jived, it might betray itself? So the technique then is to keep looking for just a chink in the door, just one way in. And psychedelics are it, as far as I can tell. And then, of course, some psychedelics more than others. But more and more I have this intuition that the world is like a literary construction of some sort. That this is much more like a novel than it is like the world of physics and entropy and equilibrium that we're cheerfully assured we should believe it is. Because what we feel in our own lives, I think, is the invisible hand of an author moving us to this affair, this decision to move, this career choice, this drug trip, so forth and so on. I mean, it is a very authored feeling to reality. And it hints that, as it says in Moby Dick, all visible things are but as pasteboard masks. If you would strike through the mask. And similarly obsessed and transcendental ravings. I just saw Moby Dick recently. I knew that Ray Bradbury had done the screenplay, and it's brilliant. But what I had forgotten was that John Huston was the director. God, it's amazing. I mean, it's nothing like the book, but for a flick, it's pretty good.